All right. Welcome to November 2024 live Q&A. This is going to be our last Q&A for the year. I'm not going to hold one in December just as an announcement. I will say this at the end too, just for anyone who comes on a little bit later. So December is going to be very low key. Not much is going to be happening. No live Q&A. If you're in BBA, there's not going to be any monthly hot seat or co-working or anything in December. And then we will start back up again in January. I'm going to be creating a new link for all of these things and redoing the calendar because we had some hiccups with the ad event calendar that we were using. So it will be all new links in January for all these things. You'll get them in your email and whatnot as per usual, but I just wanted to give you a heads up in case you have the link saved. And yeah, so let's get to it. Let's do our live Q&A. Shoot your questions in the chat if you have any. And I'm in my bedroom today because Alyssa's here visiting and she was borrowing my desk with my microphone and all that stuff for one of her recordings that she was doing. So we are making things work around here. But yeah, give me your questions. I see it's still named BBA info session. So this is part of the reason why I need to just read you all the links and send those out. Yeah. Let me pull up the Facebook group to see if there's any questions in there that warrant some answering while I'm waiting for all you. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My microphone is on, so but yeah, let me know in the chat if you have any questions. Hopefully someone here has some questions today. Not everyone's just here to observe. Okay, can you send your meals chart of accounts, working on making all clients chart of accounts the same, and they are all different. So what I do is I have travel meals and then business meals. And then every client has those options. I don't know if you wanted something different, but yeah, you can decide how to make your client's chart of accounts kind of congruent and just rename things. That can be kind of tedious, obviously, but I think it's worth it whenever, especially when you start hiring team, to make all of your clients have very similar chart of accounts, at least the base level of them, numbering and all that kind of stuff. Can you talk about how you were able to only work 10 to 15 hours a week while you were still scaling your business? And are you still only at about 20 hours a week now? Yeah. So Natasha, I still only work about 20 hours a week between both businesses. So in my firm, I probably work maybe 5 hours a week. And it's mainly the activities that I do in the firm with those 5 hours are mainly leadership and operational activities that are just continuing to like check up on client stuff, where things are at with the team. Obviously, that is a different balance when you're doing everything yourself and you're doing the work. So I slowly grew my firm from the point where initially I was doing 10 to 15 hours a week when I was doing most of the work. And then when it got to the point where I was going to have to do more than that, that's when I hired a bookkeeper and started offloading all the bank feed transactions, reconciliations, and then we developed our month-end process. And so every new client that I brought on, I just rolled her into it and I would just do the oversight of it and the meetings if there were any. And then I slowly built the team up as I was slowly bringing on clients. So all of my team are also part-time. Obviously, depending on your capacity and your team capacity and all that kind of stuff, depends on how quickly you can ramp up and how quickly you get clients in, right? So I never onboarded more than like 2 or 3 clients in 1 month. And then we'll go months without onboarding a new client. So the growth is very steady and slow. And so I just slowly was able to remove myself out of more and more of the day-to-day. So The bookkeeper was doing all of the kind of the day-to-day stuff, and then I would come in at month end and review things. And then that was the next piece that I started outsourcing, was the month end review. So I hired somebody to do that, and he works about 5 to 10 hours a week as well, doing that and managing the basically like the account manager. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. And yeah, these days I'm working about 5 hours in the firm, and the rest of my time is spent on Ambitious Bookkeeper. Tanya says, hey, Serena, hey, are you still using SparkMail for your team? Do you like it? I'm looking for a collaborative email solution for my team. Yes, I am. I do like it. There's a newer version that has AI built in, and I use the AI to help me draft emails. And yeah, but it's still working for us and our team. And I think they work on Windows computers now as well. I think Alyssa uses something called Missive. So that's another option too. I think a Spark with 1, 2, 3, 4 of us on the team, it's like $50 a month, something around there, $56 a month or something, just to give you an idea of pricing on Spark. Any other questions, or if you need clarification? It's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm also curious if you're willing to share how long it took you to get near 6 figures while doing that process in your bookkeeping firm. I'm new to BBA and looking for inspiration. Yeah, this is one of those areas that I'm always like, it really depends on how much time you have to work and how much time you have to like hustle to get new clients. So I've always relied on like the slow and steady long game type of client acquisition, where I'm just constantly building relationships, doing podcast interviews, and networking with like my current clients and letting them know that we're accepting referrals and all that kind of stuff. So it took me a few years, I would say. Maybe by year 4, I was making 6 figures in revenue. But I want to caveat that like 6 figures in revenue does not translate into bringing 6 figures home necessarily, depending on what level of 6 figures, right? But if you're like right at the 100K mark and you have a team, you're probably only going to be bringing home 50K of that, which is a huge deal for a lot of us. And when you think about it, like to bring home 50K only working 5 hours a week, that's damn good. So it's kind of like whatever level your capacity is. Like if I wasn't running 2 businesses and was pouring all of my energy into just my firm, I could have grown it a lot faster after that 4th year and really turned up the dial. That's just a like conscious choice that I've made to not take it much further than where it's at currently in this season of my life. In future plans, I absolutely have plans to grow it even more because I want to sell it and I want to have it at a certain point when I sell it. But right now, this season in my life and for the past 7, 8 years, I've been just keep doing this slow and steady growth because that's what works for me with my little kids and my family situation and everything. So there's all these different factors that are involved, and there's people that are in BBA who have grown way faster than that and have exceeded my growth and my firm size as well, because they have the time to implement it and they have maybe different levels of support at home and all that kind of stuff. So it really just depends on your situation. And yes, anything is possible. How do you self-qualify or pre-qualify prospects before getting on a call with them to minimize the time spent talking to those that would not be a good fit? Ooh, I love this question. So, I pre-qualify people by having ample information on our website, but not overwhelming information about who we serve and the types of businesses, type of business owner, and the levels of businesses that we serve. So if you were to look on my website at my packages, each one gives an idea of the revenue range that businesses would fall into for each package. So that's one way to self-qualify, is giving enough information so when people look at your website, they understand where they fit in. whether it be industry, business size, all of the above. And then the second area that I pre-qualify people is there's no way to book a call with me on my website. You have to fill out an interest form. So this is how I get information before I even invite someone to book a call with me. Back in the day, I used to have a book a call button, and then it would take them to Acuity, which is the scheduler I use. And there was the same questionnaire built in order for them to schedule the call. And that worked also. I just changed my process to be able to protect my calendar a little more because I just didn't have enough time to be even allowing just people to book calls. Because even in that instance, when you give them a form to fill out and then they immediately can book the call, you might still get people that have booked the call that aren't in your industry, or maybe are too big or too small, or whatever the issue might be, that you can actually see before you take the call that they're not going to be a good fit. And then you would have to cancel the call, or maybe you would still take the call and then get sucked into people pleaser tendencies and take them on as a client, even if you knew they weren't a good fit. So that's why I like the interest form side of things. And yes, you are preventing people from filling out the interest. Like, people are going to look at it and be like, I don't want to fill this out. And you might lose a client. But my argument for that is, would you want a client that isn't willing to fill out a 10-question questionnaire anyways? Because that's just like an idea of how it's going to be getting information from them to begin with, like while working together. So they have to fill out the interest form, and I ask some questions that determine whether or not I think that they would be a good fit. Like, I ask for their website so I could go creep on what type of business they are to see if they're in an industry that we serve, and kind of like how well they have their stuff together, and learn about them and all that kind of stuff. And then I have them like agree that they can afford our minimum fee, that they are going to communicate with us, and all these things. So I absolutely have had multiple people fill out that form and answer questions in a way that give me an idea that they're not a great fit. And then obviously, like, if they're in a different industry than we serve, you can choose to have the call with them if you want. I typically email them back and let them know we only serve clients in XYZ industry. Here's some alternate referrals for people who do serve your industry. And that's where I go to our community here, and I pull whoever niches in that industry who is reaching out to me, and I'll give them their contact information. So that is how I eliminate needing to get on calls with prospects that aren't pre-qualified, and it has worked out very well for me. um, Natasha says, you mentioned building relationships. I've been attending networking events and then doing one-on-ones to build relationships, which takes so much time with very little return over the past 6 months. People say this is the best way, and it takes a year to see the return on your networking. Can you share your thoughts on this? I agree that it takes time to see a return on your networking, it's all a numbers game, really. Like, it really depends on how much you're networking and how quickly you're going to see a return, and how not necessarily aggressive, but like how forward you are with letting people know that, like, you're looking for business and inviting people to work with you. A lot of the relationship building that I do is more like meeting with people and learning what they are doing in their business and how I can support them, and like who I should refer to them, and we exchange that kind of information. It's not necessarily, I'm not networking with people who would be potential clients, but sometimes that happens. So yeah, it can take 6 months to a year to really start seeing the fruits of your labor. Um, the alternative is to spend money. You either spend money or time on getting the word out, right? So you could spend money on ads, or you could do both and have it like kind of balanced out. But yeah, it can take some time depending on how many conversations you're having and how much you're putting yourself out there. But yeah. Any other questions? How did I find my first hire? My first hire I found in a Facebook group, a mom's Facebook group that both of us were in, and somebody had commented or asked a question in the group about like work from home jobs and like that were legitimate. And so this actually I see this still happen to this day 8 years later in mom Facebook groups of moms being like, I'm looking for a work from home opportunity that's like legit. Does anyone know of anything? So that's basically what it was. And so a bunch of people commented in the comments about, you know, different opportunities. And I commented like, well, what are your skills? Do you have like administrative or like bookkeeping skills or anything like that? And I was like, I run a bookkeeping business and it's a really good, you know, a way to earn money from home. And I was really just trying to like, you know, share. I wasn't trying to like recruit anybody into like BBA at that point. I was just starting out myself as well. So BBA wasn't even like a thing. I was just trying to share, you know, what had been working for me. And there were people in the comment section who had some like accounting experience. And so I was like kind of going back and forth with them. And then one of the women that commented had mentioned that she owned a farm and she'd been doing her own bookkeeping. And she was like, oh, I'm really interested in hearing about like maybe turning this into something since I have the skills. And so we started chatting and I was like, well, actually, I need help. And like, I'm willing to mentor you if you want to come work for me on a couple clients a month. Because she only wanted to, you know, she was only looking for a few extra hours. And so that's who I ended up hiring. We just got on a phone call and we chatted and we clicked, and she's still with me today. It's Tia. She came with me to XeroCon and everything this last year. So so yeah, I definitely like hire based on vibes and personality more than anything else. Like, yes, there's base level skills that people should have, but if you're willing to put in the time to mentor somebody, then you'll have a very loyal team. So it's worth it. Um, Alina or Alina, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but yes, you can unmute and ask if you like.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm in my car because I'm at work.
No problem.
I'm like, okay, maybe you can just help me, like, I don't know, get through my brain. Okay, so like a year ago, I'm like, okay, I want to do this bookkeeping side business. I registered my LLC. I picked a name, registered LLC. I got my QuickBooks for Advisor certificate. I got Zero certified. I did the Katie Farrow BAB thing. I don't know what my problem is. Like, it's been a year and I have not networked really. I'm just afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to get a client and I'm not going to know what to do. I'm going to screw something up. And I mean, my background, I'm an accountant and I passed my CPA exam. So I'm like, okay, I know I can figure it out. But part of me is like hesitating, like how, if I get a client and I don't know what's going on, who do I talk things through with? Like, I feel a little alone and
Yeah.
it's making me nervous.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm like dying to get a client, but I'm also like so afraid to even put myself out there.
Yeah.
I did do some Upwork. I mean, that really didn't lead anywhere, but I'm not, yeah, I could be probably applying on Upwork more, but I don't.
Yeah. Okay. So I can guarantee you're in good company. Probably almost everyone in this room felt like this before they got their first client, including myself. So that's number one. And like at some point, you're going to have to decide if it's like going to be more uncomfortable to just sit in this um space of like not having a client, or like the short-term discomfort of you'll probably get a client that you're going to have to put the puzzle together and figure things
Mhm.
out. I can almost guarantee it. And
Mhm.
are going to come out on the other side and be like, okay, yeah, I figured this out. Like, are there any instances like in your corporate job where you've stepped into and it like, or whatever, what do you do for in corporate? Are you in accounting department?
I'm an account manager at a construction company. So I've been here for 12 years. And that's the other thing that I think I get nervous about. I'm like, this is all I know. So I'm like,
Yeah.
and that's why I kind of took Katie Farrow's BAB course,
Yeah.
the one where she kind of teaches you how to bookkeep. And I
Mhm.
knew all of it, and I did
Yeah.
good on her little practicum thing. I don't know. I just still feel like, I don't know enough. And what if it's not a service industry? What if it's something different? And I don't know how to handle this inventory or this or that.
Yeah. I would say like, especially when you come from a corporate environment, the accounting is more complex in a corporate, especially if it's a big company, than it will
Hmm.
ever be in a small business.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
about a
even
$30
like,
million sales
yeah,
construction company where I work. So yes, it's much larger than I would actually
yeah,
be working
exactly.
on.
So that's one thing. Number two is most small businesses are cash basis, so the accounting is even less complex, you know what I mean? And so you may not even be really tracking inventory. You can choose not to even work with
Hmm.
inventory-based businesses to start out as well.
Hmm.
Um, but I guarantee like so when you first got into the construction job, did you ever have to, or if has you've been there, have you ever had to clean up a disaster?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have the skills.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that like if you since you've already been there and done that design processes and things like yes, when you first bring on a client, everything is going to be new. You're going to have to ask the client a lot of questions. You're probably going to be missing some information from the client and you're going to feel
Hmm.
like you're not that you don't know what you're doing or that you're
Hmm.
lacking in some area, and that's usually the issue is that like we just didn't ask the client for the right documentation or they don't even have it, so we're trying
Hmm.
to piece things together with like just imagination and trends.
Hmm.
So that tends to happen a lot too. And so I would say that's the most difficult part of working with the small businesses is thinking that you don't know something because they actually are lacking the documentation that you
Hmm.
needed that you
Hmm.
normally have access to in corporate because you're
Okay.
the one responsible for keeping the documentation. So that tends to happen a lot. And then the other side of that is making judgment calls on, okay, well, they don't have the documentation. So what can we actually do here? And being okay with things like literally not being perfect
Mm-hmm.
because like and just having conversations with clients about okay like in the future keep this documentation because it's really important, so if you were to get audited this might not be something that would pass because you literally don't have the documentation and we just had to like recreate something. So
Hmm.
that tends to be what happens frequently with small businesses, and that's where a lot
Hmm.
of us get hung up on like, oh, I don't know enough, but it's not us, it's the
Hmm.
documentation issue.
Hmm.
But yeah, so as far as like who do you go to if you are stuck, you have our community. Are you in our Facebook community, the Ambitious
Yeah.
Bookkeeper?
Yep. Yep.
So that's number one place to go. If you're still in any of Katie's communities, you have access there as
Hmm.
well. And there's a lot of really knowledgeable people. I'm obviously in the group and can
Hmm.
answer questions, and I can almost guarantee you there's someone in this group or on this call that
Hmm.
be willing to like jump on a Zoom and like
Hmm.
troubleshoot together. Having
Yeah.
having someone else in the industry that you can like bounce ideas off of and meet every so often is also a really good strategy as well. I have Alyssa Lang for that. Like we
Hmm.
just call each
Yeah.
other all the time and like, hey, how would you handle this thing or whatever. It's even when you know the answer, it's really helpful to have someone give you feedback of you're on the right track.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's probably someone in this group that would be willing to hop on calls in those situations. You can always post in the Facebook group and just say, "Hey, is anyone willing to hop on a Zoom this week to troubleshoot this issue?" So
Yeah.
don't let that hold you back. You definitely have the knowledge and the capability and the background to get a client. And yeah, you might struggle through it and you're going to learn a lot and then you're going to
Hmm.
be like better for the next client. So
Hmm.
you've
Thank
got this.
you. Well, like I'm paying for my website, I'm paying for, the Google Workspace. I'm like, I have all my little Google Forms set up, and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, why can't I just get a client and at least get that stuff paid for?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm going to challenge you to this month either go apply on more Upwork jobs or go to some sort of networking event and practice saying that you are doing this and just see what happens.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Serena.
You're welcome. Amber says, I think the nervousness is also just a desire to do a great job because you really want to help people. Yeah, absolutely. And doing things correctly for sure. Natasha says, in the beginning, did you find most of your clients on Upwork, and how is it through podcasts? Yes, in the beginning, I found all my initial clients on Upwork, and then those clients, I did a stellar job. This is part of the process, is like delivering and over delivering for your first few clients, which I think is naturally going to happen for anyone who cares a lot. And so then they refer you to their business friends. And so that's how I got all my initial clients. And I'm gonna say a little note about Upwork because I've had some feedback in the group and in my courses where people are not getting traction in Upwork. And so my suggestion there is, since I don't know the numbers like of how many times people are applying for jobs and whatnot, but my strategy in order to actually land jobs on Upwork was literally applying to 10 jobs per day. And out of each 10 jobs, I might have gotten one interview. And out of one or two interviews, I may have landed one client. So the conversion is low and it's a slog to apply to these things. But like I said earlier to someone asking about, it was you also, Natasha, asking about building relationships and how long it takes. You can spend your time at networking events, or you can spend a couple hours a day or an hour a day checking Upwork multiple times a day and applying for jobs immediately, because that's also the thing, is like you want to be one of the first people to apply when a job is posted. So it is time consuming to log into Upwork every day and monitor those job postings and apply to them immediately. But if you need clients, that's kind of what you need to do. So yeah, depending on how many jobs you're applying to determines, it's a numbers game, determines your success. Definitely not going to get any traction if you only apply to one Upwork job a week. Until you build out your Upwork profile and you start getting fed to business owners. If you're brand new on Upwork, you have to do the legwork to land the jobs. And then how is it through podcasts? So I have taken a little bit of a break from interviewing on podcasts. Earlier this year, I was doing um, a couple every month. And then in years past, I've done several. And I do still, like, I get leads from being on other people's podcast guests. So from one podcast, it really depends on their audience. So it depends on how many listeners they have. If you're really like talking directly to the type of listener they have in the industry. So being strategic on which kind of podcast you're going on. Initially, you don't have to be strategic if you're just trying to get your message down and practicing your message. But as you nail down kind of what you're talking about on these podcasts and answering questions and getting comfortable, you really want to be strategic on which podcasts you are appearing on and making sure that it's your ideal audience. So unless you know, a lot of times you don't know how big the audience size is, I usually don't ask. I just go on and deliver value, because if one person hears me and one person calls me, that's a win. So yeah, I usually get a couple different inquiries after each podcast goes live. Sometimes it takes a bit. Sometimes it's not immediately after the podcast goes live. It could be a month or two down the line, because people tend to binge things as well. The other strategy I use is teaching in guest, like teaching as a guest in other people's programs. For anyone who has a program like around the type of client that I work with. So I work with course creators, e-commerce, and a lot of coaches and consultants. So I target those types of programs that are geared towards helping those people. And yeah, so I do that. That's also helpful. Those are probably, um, I wouldn't say better converting, but in a way, it builds more rapport because it's a face-to-face thing than a podcast, than them just hearing you once on a podcast and it's just your voice, but they still are both very effective. In the beginning, I already read that question. I just thought like move, so I thought it was a new question. So yeah, I hope that helps. That has been my strategy over the past couple years, actually, on getting clients. Because I am also doing like a slow growth mode, I am not pitching myself for a ton of podcasts. If I was really trying to, like, if I was in the position of trying to onboard one new client every month, I would be pitching myself for 3 podcasts a month. But that's just me. I'm not doing that right now. So, and not just pitching myself for 3 podcasts, I would be trying to land 3 podcasts a month. So if you're pitching yourself for podcasts, you're wanting to, you've got to back into that number, right? It's kind of like the Upwork thing. So it's like, if I land 1 client per podcast interview that I do, and I want 1 client per month, then I need to be on at least 1 or 2 podcasts per month, which means I've probably got to pitch myself for 5 podcasts because not everybody's going to accept you as a guest. You know what I mean? So you got to back into that number. How can we differentiate ourselves when there are so many bookkeepers vying for the same business? Haha, right. Okay. Got to take a drink because starting to get raspy over here. Okay. So pitching your, how can you differentiate yourself when there are so many bookkeepers vying for the same business? Michelle, I would start by asking, are you working with a specific industry? That is number 1 way to differentiate yourself, is to pick an actual industry and just market to that industry, because business owners want to know that you understand their specific business. And if you are a bookkeeper for everybody, then they aren't going to necessarily, that's not going to set you apart. I know you've probably heard it before. The generalist type model is difficult in this market, I think. If you're just starting out, pick like a sector of an industry, like that you're interested in and start there. Maybe you change it down the line. Maybe you end up landing someone that's not in that industry and you decide, oh, I like this industry better. It can feel a little bit scary to niche down on an industry at first. So the other thing that I would do with differentiating yourself, if you don't want to go the route of honing in on an industry, is if you are open to networking locally, start networking. But when you're networking, the way you're going to be differentiating yourself is showing your personality and then talking about the way that you help businesses. So when I talk to businesses, this is what I talk about on podcasts too. I always tie in what I'm talking about. And then I say, and this is like what we do for our clients to help with this is blah, blah, blah. So I'll talk about on podcasts, for instance, like business owners having a hard time paying themselves or not knowing what to pay themselves. And so then I say, well, in order to figure out how much to pay yourselves, we have to figure out how much it costs to run your business on a monthly basis. And so if you don't have visibility into your numbers and understand what your monthly burn rate is for cash, then you're never going to be able to really reverse engineer your revenue goals to figure out how much you need to pay yourself. And the other aspect of that is having an understanding of how much you actually need to bring home in order for your household to survive. So I talk all about that. And I do this at networking events too, when I'm talking one-on-one to somebody, and just sharing the knowledge that you have is one way of differentiating yourself and showing your personality. But the other piece that I was getting at, long story short, is if you're not doing this, this is a great way to differentiate yourself, and that is to provide financial reports to your clients, because a lot of what is status quo and normal in the bookkeeping industry is to just do the bookkeeping and then let the client know like, oh, it's done for this month or whatever. And if you really want to set yourself apart, you can let people know, like, when you work with me, I actually deliver your financial reports at the end of every month. And I bullet point out some key information that you might want to know, which does require a little bit of extra work from us as bookkeepers. So that there is that. So it kind of depends on which route you want to go. Um, but that's why we charge more in our firm, and I'm very upfront about that with our clients. When they get on discovery calls, it's like the reason we charge what we do is because we provide this extra value at the end of every month, and it's not typical in the bookkeeping industry to do that, especially to bullet point out like KPIs. And they're very simple KPIs. It's nothing crazy. It's revenue, it's operating expenses, it's profit, and it's profit margin. So it's not anything crazy. It should only take you 5 minutes to calculate that if you're already running the reports for the client. So that is how we've differentiated ourselves, is providing the extra value at the end of every month and providing those key insights, and niching in an industry. And then the third aspect of this is to have really good communication and open communication with your clients, because a lot of clients feel like their accountant and their bookkeepers don't, like, they just don't communicate enough and they don't know what's going on. So that's the third way to differentiate yourself, which obviously you can't really prove that until someone's already a client. I have a podcast episode coming out in a couple weeks, I think. I don't know when it's slated, but I just did the interview last week where we talked about um creating like a stellar, like a really amazing client experience so that your current clients become your biggest cheerleaders and they market you. And that's basically what I've done in my firm too. I have a few clients that are constantly shouting us out in Facebook groups and all the things. So it's like you get your first client, you over deliver to them, um, and you provide amazing communication, you make them feel heard, you help them understand their financials, and they will absolutely bring in new clients for you. And you just have to trust that process too. It's scary. It is scary to just trust the process. I'm not going to discount that. It's a valid feeling. So, yeah. All right, we have a couple more minutes. I'm going to end the Q&A at 11:45, and I just realized a minute ago that I was going to be previously I broadcasted this on YouTube Live, and I totally spaced out doing that since that was a new process. So I will probably just upload this to YouTube so that everyone can have access to the replay. But yeah. Any other questions as we close out? We've got 5 more minutes. Going once? Going twice? All right. Well, thank you all for joining this live Q&A. As I mentioned at the top, in case anyone was not here at the very beginning, we're taking a break for December. There will be no live Q&A. If you're in BBA, there will be no December calls, no co-workings, any of that stuff. We're gearing up for 1099 season and the holidays. So I am taking a little hiatus from all the lives and the Q&As and all the things. So December is my vacation month. I do a lot of behind the scenes work on the firm, and that's when I do a lot of planning for the following year and just kind of revamping some systems, and also just plain old resting and taking actual time off to be with my family. In January, will it be the first Thursday? That is a good question. That's what I was going to reiterate from the top of this. I'm going to be redoing the whole calendar and sending out new links and everything because we had some issues with, we were trying to integrate like Advent and some different calendars and stuff. And I think things just got mucked up. And so I'm going to create new Zoom links for these Q&As. I may end up changing the day and time. I'm not 100% sure on that yet, so stay tuned. But yes, we will be doing a monthly live Q&A starting in January. And if you're in BBA VIP, we will also be rolling back into the monthly co-working and monthly hot seat calls. And yeah, so stay tuned for all of that. We'll send an email out with the new schedule if anything changes, but you'll also get new links and all that stuff. So thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season, and that everyone is taking care of themselves and incorporating rest and time to recuperate if you're super busy. And if you are just ramping up your business, take advantage of this being the end of the year and really go put yourself out there because people are now going to start thinking about needing a bookkeeper. This is actually the best time of year to get people in your pipeline, and then continue to follow up with them in January. So anyone that you talk to in November and December, make sure you follow up with them in early January or mid-January and get them on your client roster. It's best time of year to gain clients because a lot of people wait. So yeah, thank you so much. Already so busy with year-end stuff. I hear you about January 1099s. Yeah, right. December is the calm before the storm. But yeah. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day and enjoy your holiday season, and we'll see you in January.